This is the Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
And now, Hands on History with Heather.
Hello, and welcome to the Hands on History segment of Tudors Dynasty Podcast. My name is Heather Darsie, and I am delighted to be joined by Rebecca Lyon today. She is a historical playwright. Welcome, Rebecca. It's so nice to have you.
It's lovely to be here, yes.
What do you do exactly?
I'm a playwright, and most of my work is for children and young people. And I focus on the history of the local area or history that they happen to be studying in school. And my work sort of aims really to share knowledge and to engage these children in their past and to spark their curiosity.
So what age group do you aim at?
Usually I write for 7 to 11-year-olds. So they're still curious, they're still having lots of silly fun, but they're really expanding their knowledge to different areas.
What sparked your interest in writing historical plays?
At university, I did English and history. I read English and history for my undergraduate degree. And then I read Shakespeare and literary influence for my master's. And I've always loved the theatre and I've always loved history. And I guess thinking about moments that stick in my mind as a child, I think being involved in plays and in the theatre, those can be such magical moments for children. And when you get that magic combined with what you're studying at school, it can really bring that to life. And so that's and when I had children of my own, I thought, wow, this is a wonderful opportunity to bring together those two worlds of theatre and history.
What was your first historical play?
My first historical play was called Boss Boudicca, and it was a play about Boudicca, who is one of our sort of national heroines, I suppose, the Celtic leader of the Iceni tribe who stood up against the Roman invasion. And it's a very complex and very nuanced story, and it's a very sad story in many ways, and it's a story of warfare and invasion and some terrible, terrible things. My take on it, if you like, was that I wanted to create something for children so that they would understand the facts and figures that they'd know for their studying, but at the same time they could take away something that was relevant to them. Things like standing up to bullies, working with people that are not necessarily in your tribe, and also having some fun, but having a hint of the complexities of our history. And obviously, you know, you don't want it to be an enjoyable experience, but I think as they're learning empathy and curiosity and research, I wrote that in response, if you like, to other ways of presenting Boudicca to children, which were either very as though she was a very nasty, bossy, horrible, wild person, or that she was a very black and white type heroine and sort of glorifying warfare, if you like. And neither of these things, I thought, I think these kids can cope with something a little bit more subtle and more gentle. And it kind of depends on the children involved, because you have to centre them and their particular needs. But I thought, this is a way that I can do this that might be of use to teachers in the classroom or community practitioners.
How do you prepare for writing a play, like from a historical perspective?
So I like to read as much contemporary scholarship as I can. I'm not an academic, so I'm not able to read primary documents, and I would certainly be lost when it came to particularly expert articles, etc. But the wonderful historians that we have that publish accessible books that someone with a general reader with an interest in history like myself can read, I will devour those, as a lot of your listeners I'm sure do as well. And what I do is I think about the particular age of the children that I'm writing for, and I think, what do they need from this? And then, rather like E.H. Carr in his book, when he's comparing what is history, when he's comparing a historian to a fishmonger, selecting their facts and putting them on display in their shop, I will think about what sort of narrative arc I want to create and select characters, incidents, dates, events and battles, or whatever it may be, to create an arc where characters go on a journey, characters learn, characters overcome obstacles and work with one another to reach the conclusion. Now, of course, that may be seen as rather a simplistic or trite or moralistic way of looking at history, but I do believe that even if you don't have a simple moral of the story, that when you're writing for children, it needs to be moral, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
And and without sugarcoating things, shall we say, there are ways of talking about our past, even the horrendous stuff, which can be not spun positively, but talked about in a way that is thoughtful and hopeful and can give children real knowledge, but some optimism as well.
Well, and how to relate to the characters in the
Oh,
plays or the historical figures in the plays too.
100%. Mm.
What has been your favorite play to write?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I do have a lot of fun. I really do recommend writing for children because it's really fun. I think my favourite play, well, there's two actually, I'm cheating. So my favourite play to write was a play called Alice and the Empress, which was all about Empress Matilda, the uncrowned, well, the First Lady of England, if you like. And
she was back in about the 12th or 13th century, right?
yes. And she was absolutely amazing. And there's a wonderful book about, several wonderful books about her published by really wonderful writers as well as historians, which is wonderful when it happens. And I wrote a story about her and a sailmaker's daughter. And the tale follows this ordinary girl and her journey alongside Matilda's as well.
Well, and Matilda, she married the one of the Holy Roman emperors, and so she actually went and lived outside England for a while, and that was part of her struggle.
Yes.
And Alice is the sailmaker's daughter?
Yes, that's right. And I wanted to include it's important for me to include working people and working class characters, because that's also such an important part of our history and something that people can relate to, and that ordinary people can have extraordinary contributions to make to society. Yes, and the second play that I absolutely adored working on was for a local theatre group about a town which wasn't so far away from me. And we all know that when we start digging into the history of our local areas, we find so much fascinating material and so many wonderful stories about all sorts of people. And the children really grabbed these anecdotes and tales of their town and ran with them, and they thought they were absolutely wonderful. We had one of the characters was a Victorian mayor, and the current mayor of the town came to see the show, and he was great. And so the children had this real sense of their history, their town, their representatives as being truly theirs.
Do you work frequently with historical actors then?
I have done, and it's one of the wonderful things that we have over here. I'm not sure how popular it is in the US, but there are plenty of people here who engage in historical reenactment or costumed interpretation. And some of them are professional actors, some of them are members of the community who have a love of history. And I've written several plays for them specifically. So they might say to me, oh, we're really interested in Anne Herbert, who was lady in waiting to many of the queens of Henry VIII. Of course, all your listeners will know this, but so I wrote a play about her. And and my history sort of has a light touch, you see, and that's because I don't really take myself very seriously. But everybody who has a historical passion will have certain characteristics in their own personality that they can use to present history to others in their own unique way. So yes, I love writing for community groups who are not necessarily professional actors, and it's interesting because when you're writing for children to perform, you have to center your whole main purpose is to make a show that these children will remember for the rest of their lives and will have a wonderful time doing it. So it avoids topics that might be upsetting, or one avoids topics that avoids having characters that are very villainous or very scary. But with adult actors, you have a bit more freedom. But again, with a community group rather than professional actors, again, it's centering the experience of the performer so that they can feel confident in their role as a conduit for history, if you like, and present that to their audience. It's a little bit different when I'm writing for professional actors, because they're trained to do all this, all the magic, all the arts of the theatre, you can focus more on the audience. So if I'm writing for professional actors, I will say, what do I want the audience to feel? Do I want them to feel inspired, empowered, scared, surprised, shocked? And then your actors, they use their incredible skills to bring to life the words on the page and to create that magic, which is part of why I love the theatre so much. That it's almost like people say that libraries are time machines, and books are wonderful avenues that we can be telepathic and travel the world and travel our universe and history. And then the theatre is a similar type of magical element. And interestingly, I think writing plays I love it so much because there is an element of some of the ritual that was perhaps more part of life in days gone by that you still get in the theatre. So that element of ritual and moving the audience and empowering the actors is really, really central to what I do and why I love it.
How do you determine what to write about next?
That's the thing about history, isn't it? There's so flipping much of it. And for me, I might have a commission from a local theatre or a local school saying, we'd like a play about this because it's local to our area, or this because the children are studying it at school and they want something to bring it alive. But if I'm writing something uncommissioned off my own back, if you like, then it's often I might see I saw a tweet about a wonderful Victorian mathematician called Ada Lovelace, and it was sort of saying what a terrible mathematician she was, and she's so overrated, and blah, 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 blah. And you sort of, as your heckles rise, and you think, well, I don't know about that, and so you then go on in a rabbit hole and look at different sources, and that sort of when you get that feeling that actually there's something there that I need to investigate a little bit, or there is something that is the right thing to do. And we often people talk about an itch that needs to be scratched, or in terms of writing. And I think when you read books or articles or even tweets, they are somebody is giving their thoughts or their opinions, and opinions, we all have opinions, but we need if we can. I'm rambling now, I'm really sorry.
No, it's all right. Well,
Rebecca
I think part of what I hear you saying, I can connect with what you're saying, is it's almost this sense of righting a wrong or just bringing more knowledge to the world, because it is very easy especially nowadays, to go on the internet and to see an opinion that, whether the opinion's right or wrong, it can spark our own personal interest in something, and it can lead to really, really great results. And I think
Yeah.
that with your goal and purpose of bringing knowledge and sparking curiosity of children being a main focus, I don't think you're rambling at all. You're making a lot of sense to me. And I mean, I tend to go on and on when I talk to you, so don't worry. But no, you're making a lot of sense. I think that because effectively you're just saying, hey, here's this woman, Ada Lovelace, and she's maybe being a bit maligned. Well, maybe I should teach the children about her. That's what
Yes,
I'm hearing you say.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and it's and of course the more you find out about people and the more uh you know, the more incredible they become, because everyone's incredible and everyone has these interesting stories. And I think although, you know, it's so much better than it used to be, I think as you know, women, we still need to be championing people from underrepresented backgrounds, including women, in our work, especially for children, because it's, you know, it's all for them, really.
Is there anything else you'd like us to know about what you do?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a really important question which I mull over all the time with regard to my work and the work of all your listeners who might want to write historical fiction, because plays are very much fiction, and that is how true, how historically accurate do I have to be? And it's a really, really knotty issue, because we have, you know, controversies like, you know, The Crown, the series on Netflix, where people were concerned that people would be misrepresented and they were still alive, and then other people were saying, "Oh, well, it's fiction. Everyone knows it's fiction," and then you know, you have people who are saying that, you know, uh, we need to concentrate on facts, and we can't have empathy with people from a culture which is so alien to us. You know, these Tudors went to watch bear fights for fun. um, and children were kidnapped to perform in choirs. You know, but um, and it's interesting because I was reading this wonderful book. It's quite old now. Richard Evans' Lying About Hitler, in which he talks about this, how incredibly important it is to, there is such a thing as fake history, and that you know, truth is so important, and accuracy, um, and and then of course there's the whole Shakespeare authorship controversy, which was really, you know, since the Victorian times, I think maybe even earlier, Shakespeare's authorship has been called into question. But more recently, people have been saying, hang on a minute, actually, scholars like Stanley Wells and Paul Edmondson and James Shapiro's fantastic book, Contested Will, saying that truth matters. And so it's very important to me to consider really carefully, because, you know, I do have scenes in Boss Boudica where people are fighting each other with handbags, and people are leaving messages for Emperor Nero on his answer phone. So it's really difficult. It's a really interesting thing to play with and to be aware of, and people will resolve that question differently. For me, it's a case of silly is obviously silly, and anything else is fair game. But the important things, dates, people, events, are adhered to and not uh, tampered with in a way that would affect their meaning or their outcome. And Boudica comes back as a ghost at the end, and says, you know, yes, I did die, but my legacy was da 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 da. So so yeah, that's a really interesting question for me. But I don't think people should be put off by that. You will find your own way of dealing with that question, and as long as you do it with sincerity, and you have that research, and you put in that research, and you have that empathy, then and you make sure that you say what you're doing is fiction, if it is, then why not go for it?
What advice do you have for anyone interested in becoming a playwright?
I think the first thing to do is have the mindset that if you want to be a playwright, you're meant to be a playwright, probably, because it means that you love the theatre, you love writing, you love plays. I would say hone your skill, because playwriting, like shipwriting or wheel writing or cart writing, is a craft, and don't beat yourself up if you read a first draft of something and you think, oh no, that's really not what I wanted to write at all. Just keep hammering and chiseling away at the metaphor, she says. No, keep going. And there's some wonderful resources about for playwrights. For example, I will email some books to Heather to sort of whet your appetite for playwriting, because there are so many different approaches. The other thing, go to the theatre, any theatre, and like screenwriters do when they're watching TV, think about the mechanics, think about how it is structured, think about what the writer is trying to convey to you, trying to get you to feel, trying to get you to question, perhaps. And once you start looking behind the curtain and seeing the mechanics, you'll better understand how you can get across what you want to say and what you're passionate about. How do we find you and your works? I have a website, which is not particularly technologically advanced, but it is RebeccaLyon.co.uk. And there are links to my published work for children, some of which are available to download along with performance licenses at artsonthemove.co.uk. And also I am available through my website for commissions, workshops, anything like that. And I'm always hanging around on Twitter for any friendly chat.
What's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle, because my name is Rebecca Lyon and I do like mayonnaise on a chicken sandwich, it is Lyonnaise, and that's Lyon, Lyon _NAISE. Yes. And
we'll include links to that in the I can't think of the word, in the bit below. We'll include links so people can come find you. And one more question. So if you do workshops, can you do them over Zoom if anybody outside the UK is interested, or maybe within the UK but far away?
I do. And this is the wonderful thing about that came out of the terrible thing that there was the pandemic. Our sense of connectivity and togetherness, though we may be eras, well, maybe not eras, not just yet anyway, but certainly miles apart.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Rebecca Lyon, playwright, historical playwright. She specializes in children's plays, and it has been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Tudors Dynasty Podcast. You can follow and support the Tudors Dynasty Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon @Tudors Dynasty.